Hello everyone, back tuning in today's first video. Going to have a look at the Ecmwf Ensembles Day for the next 30 days. So we started doing this on a Tuesday last week. The Ecmwf 30-day ensemble updates twice a week on a Tuesday and a Friday. I said I did last week's first video for this. That would update it twice a week on a Tuesday and Friday, but then I got to think it would be a little bit too much, and on a Friday it would probably sort of clash with JMA Friday as well, which is another 30-day. Okay, so I said we'd do this once a week, and do it every Tuesday. It will be a regular sort of Tuesday feature that we'll have a look at the Ecmwf 30-day ensembles from the Hungarian Met Office. So, you may wonder why we can't look at this at the UK Met Office, for example, our own Met Office. I'm not sure why it's the Hungarian Met Office, of all places, that has this available. But anyway, wherever we can find the information, that's where we'll go. And so this is coming to you from the Hungarian Met Office, and I'll talk you through the temperature and precipitation anomalies that we can expect across the UK and Europe in the month ahead. This takes us to the end of June. Just say that today's second video, which will be coming up on the homepage later on this afternoon, that is going to look at the weather for the next week, 10 days in detail. So we'll start off with the week 1 temperature and precipitation anomalies from the Ecmwf ensemble. So we begin with week 1, which is showing up as week 22. It's week 22, week 23, week 24, week 25 within the year. But of course, we're talking about weeks 1, 2, 3, and 4. So the first week is taking us from the 28th of May through to the 3rd of June. And we still keep this very significantly warmer than average temperature anomaly across much of Northern Europe for the week ahead. So let's deal with the UK and Ireland first of all. We are coming out very much warmer than average, with an anomaly of somewhere between around 3 and 6 degrees above average. That is not the highest anomaly to average across Europe, because actually over Scandinavia and also, again, over central parts of Europe, we're seeing temperature anomalies there going between 6 and 10 degrees above average. So really warm across much of central and northern Europe. In fact, it is a very warm scene across much of Europe. You have to go down to Spain and Portugal to find temperature anomalies cold and average there. Also, interestingly, down across North Africa. And also across much of sort of western Russia, it's also substantially colder than average, or cooler than average there. So you can kind of see what the jet stream is doing. The jet stream is going to be going something a little bit like that with these temperature anomalies. So that's where we've got the troughs, where we've got the cooler temperatures, and of course that is where we've got the ridge across much of central and northern Europe. What about precipitation anomalies in the week ahead? Well, that's how they're looking from the 6th, from the 28th through to the 3rd of June. So we find that much of western and southwestern Europe is actually coming out a bit wetter than average. So France, Spain, Portugal, a little bit wetter than average there, and that's primarily down to thunderstorms, of course. Underneath this blocking feature, we've got low pressure to the south of it, and so that's going to be bringing thunderstorms to those western and southwestern parts of Europe. Some of that does get into the south of England. So down here around southern England, southeast England, we are coming out with a slightly wetter than average precipitation anomaly as well. However, most of Europe is actually coming out drier than average. So this wetter sort of scene extends into central parts of Germany. So anywhere to the west of Germany, back to southern England, you're a bit wetter than average. But for Scandinavia and for most of eastern and northeastern Europe, coming out substantially drier than average in the week ahead, and also drier than average across central and northern parts of the UK and Ireland as well. So many parts of Europe coming out drier than average, but precipitation via thunderstorms primarily is in the west and the southwest of Europe. So that's how week 1 is looking. What about week 2? We go through to the week from the 4th through to the 10th of June with our temperature anomalies, and very similar scenes essentially, although the anomaly is reducing slightly. So generally it's still a much warmer than average scene across the UK and across Ireland as well through this period from the 4th through to the 10th of June. Most parts of northern, central Europe, also down into the east and southeast of Europe, coming out significantly warmer than average as well. The highest anomalies to average are across central parts of Europe and also across parts of Norway, and also across the Republic of Ireland as well, interestingly, where we're going to around 3 to 6 degrees above average. So not quite as high an anomaly in this week as we have in week 1, but nevertheless still substantially warmer than average through much of Europe. Northern Scandinavia is going to be a bit cooler than average, as is most of Western Russia, and down across Spain and Portugal and North Africa, it's still a little bit cooler than average there. This is how the precipitation anomalies are looking. So again, southern, southwestern parts of Europe are coming out rather wetter than average for this week from the 4th to 10th of June. Northern Europe is coming out drier than average. So a bit of a north-south split essentially across Europe. The north is coming out a bit drier than average, but south is coming out a little bit wetter than average through this early phase of June. It does look as though the anomalies are weakening overall though. So it might be a little bit transitional here, particularly I would have thought for the northwest of Europe. It's possible that, although it may start off in this week very warm and dry, maybe just going a little bit more cooler and unsettled later on perhaps. Let's go on to week 3. This is how the week 3 ECM temperature, 30-day temperature anomaly is looking. And overall it's turning cooler in the west of Europe. So we saw this last week when we did last week's update, that we're going towards average temperature anomalies here across much of Western Europe, actually still cooler than average down across Iberia. But obviously temperatures are lowering compared to what they are in weeks 1 and 2 as we get through to week 3. So for the UK, for Ireland, for France, for the Low Countries, Belgium, Holland, also for western parts of Germany, temperatures are returning to average, which of course is a lowering of the temperature, a cooling off of the temperature compared to what we have in weeks 1 and 2. Also, much of Scandinavia returning to close to average, maybe hinting at being even a little bit cooler than average for the far north of Scandinavia. Over in the east of Europe, that's where the warmer than average temperature anomalies remain. So obviously the warmth is shifting over to the eastern side of Europe, the southeast of Europe, as it's cooling in the west. Precipitation anomalies look like that. So again, very close to average now for much of northern Europe. So we're losing those drier than average precipitation anomalies across many central and northern parts of Europe, the UK and Ireland is included. Still looking a bit wetter than average down across the Mediterranean. But here, across much of northern Europe, obviously, if we're going from that very strong drier than average signal that we had in weeks 1 and 2, to a near normal precipitation anomaly in week 3, it implies again that we are getting a change in the weather pattern. We're shifting from drier than average to near normal, which is a more unsettled, obviously more unsettled weather pattern. Not wetter than average yet, but it certainly implies that as we're getting through to this week from the 11th to the 17th of June, the middle part of June, is starting to turn both cooler and more changeable. And then as we go through to week 4, which is taking us from the 18th to the 24th of June, we look like that with the temperature anomaly. So again, much of Western Europe is seeing average temperature anomalies essentially, while the north, northeast and east of Europe is warm. So it's warm over in the east and it's average with the temperature anomaly over in the west. So again, this is telling us that in the west of Europe, obviously temperatures are lower compared to what they are in weeks 1 and 2. And in the east of Europe, that's where the warmth and the heat is being shifted over to. Scandinavia looks like it is beginning to warm up again through that week 4 period. Finally, precipitation anomalies for week 4, going from the 18th to 24th of June, are looking like that. And most parts of Europe are coming out with average precipitation now. So it could be that the signal is weakening a little bit for precipitation as we get through towards the second half of June. But I reckon essentially what's happening is that in the west of Europe, we are signalling a rather more unsettled scene with the temperature lowering. It implies that we're probably bringing the air in from off the Atlantic, which is more unsettled, of course. In the east of Europe, though, and over Scandinavia, where it is at this point quite warm, with warmer than average temperature anomalies, you would expect these areas to be drier than average. So it is also possible that maybe the model is just getting a weaker signal coming through. That is something that does tend to happen with these longer range models. The further out you go, the more the signals weaken. So a little bit uncertain as we get through to the second half of June, but I think it's still the same idea at play here that we had in last week's update, which is essentially we're starting off, obviously for the last days of May, and into the early part of June. We're starting off with lots of warm and dry weather, albeit there will be thunderstorms in the west and the southwest of Europe, but most parts of Europe are coming out significantly warm and dry, in fact hot and dry, for the early part of June. It looks like we get a change around the middle part of the month, sometime from the second or the third into the third week of June. It's likely, I think, to turn cooler and more unsettled with an Atlantic setup developing across west parts of Europe. So that includes UK, Ireland, France, sort of Belgium, Holland, probably Denmark, west parts of Germany, those areas, maybe Norway as well. Over in the northeast and the east of Europe, you probably hold on to pretty warm conditions there. The warmth is kind of pushed into the east of Europe as the west and maybe some central areas turn rather more unsettled through the middle part of June. That probably carries on into the second half of the month, although by then the signals are a bit weaker. Right, so that's a 30-day look ahead with the ECM ensembles done dusted. We'll do it all again next week, of course, and that will take us more or less to the end of June. So come back for that next week. But that's all for now. Later on this afternoon on the homepage, we will have today's second video update, which will have a look in depth at weather for next week to 10 days. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.